Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. I'm your host, Jude Boudreaux, here with Caleb Arringdale, our Director of Positivity.
Hello.
And today we've got a great guest joining us. We've got Heidi from College Inside Track. So welcome, Heidi. Thanks for joining us.
Jude, thank you so much. Caleb, nice to join you both. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously talking about college and planning is something that comes up for clients every year. If we've got kids or grandkids, we're trying to figure out how to pay for. What does college mean for them? What's the family story about this, and how are we going to talk about the financial part of it? Obviously, I mean, all of those things go into this very big decision. It's often one of the biggest decisions that an 18-year-old's been a part of. So maybe share just a little bit about kind of you and what College Inside Track does to help clients think through this process.
Yeah, no, sounds great. So I am part of the education and partnerships team here at College Inside Track. And College Inside Track has been around for the better part of 20 years now, helping families really find right fit schools for their students. And we define right fit as right fit academically, right fit socially, but we always want to make sure that that is a right fit financially for the family, the entire family. It is an exciting time. It's also a stressful time. It clearly is a milestone event for parents and students alike. So when we work with a family, we really try to help reduce that stress and help with outcomes for all.
You don't just work there; you're also a client. Effectively, I know you've got your kids who are in that college range, right?
Yeah, I did. I just recently went through a college search, and actually both of my sons have now graduated. We are, as of May this year in 2025. So I had back-to-back kids. We call them stair-step kids. And so one is out working in the world, and the other one has a job as well. One is in Chicago. One is in Austin, Texas.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So you've lived this, not just worked in it, and you understand the emotional parts of it too. So I think that makes such a big difference.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Right. So it is something that I'm passionate about because I did just go through the process with two very different learners, kids that had really different needs. And I saw how that plays out and how that can be challenging, especially if they aren't even seeking a degree that you are necessarily an expert in as a parent. Right. So trying to help them through what do they want to do? How do they think about school? And it's nice to be. It does give me a unique lens because it is something that I just recently also went through.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the right fit part I think is so important and interesting because when I was going through this process, which now is 25 years ago, strange how time works with that. There wasn't really much thought about that. It was you had some mailers and you took your standardized tests and you had your grades and maybe you read a Princeton Review article or something, but there wasn't an awful lot of thought about, what the university was like. It was hard to get a sense of that, I think, from a distance. So maybe just tell us a little bit more about how that's changed and what are you all seeing to try to help people figure out, like, what is the right fit for a student and how do you think about that as a family?
Yeah, so I agree. I just feel like back in the day, we often stayed within our state or border state school far more often. And maybe it's just the idea of, experiencing different parts in the country. But I would say the vast amount of kids really do have an out-of-state school, if not the bulk of their applications out to out-of-state schools. So I don't know about you, but I feel like I had 3 applications out and I just figured it was going to work. Now we see, and we really try to talk kids into just 6 to 12 schools. Just apply to 6 to 12 schools. Anything more than that, when you go through that actual process of applying school to school, they don't realize how many school-specific prompts or essays they're going to have to write, and the process to go through each individual application doesn't make your best work. if you're having to do 20 of those. So I think that's changed significantly since, back in the day when most of us applied to school and thought about it. The kids they have a lot more opportunities. Parents have worked very hard to give their kids opportunities. And it is more a US and sometimes international search, depending.
So what trends are you seeing with international students, both people going abroad to study and international students coming here?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I would say that universally, the US has been a destination for grad schools from students abroad, research, institutions that provide that R1 experience for med school. You can, and just master's degrees in generals as well.
Could you define R1?
It's like a level of research kind of universities that has that availability. Typically, some of the noteworthy schools that you can think of, whether it be the Ivies or U Chicago or Stanford, Tulane, some of those, North Carolina, Duke. They have probably a quarter of the students that can be international students that come into the United States. Statistics have shown of those international quarter, I don't want to break up the data too much, but a certain amount stay and then contribute to the United States. They're going to have there's a bit of a pause in trying to figure out how much some of the legislation is going to change that, where they come in and stay or they don't come in at all for grad school. Undergraduate school, we're seeing that even a little bit. And Caleb, you and I were talking about this before we started. Colleges have just announced their classes for the incoming class. And schools that were typically not opening up wait lists this late in the game did have an increased wait list. And we think it's because of the international students, for whatever reason, not getting a visa or choosing not to come because of an environment they didn't think would be working for them. But they did take a considerable amount. Meaning in the Chronicle, it reported schools like Duke had to open up a wait list, choosing to, because they wanted to fill their class. They're also growing their class. We had two things happen at the same time with Duke. Stanford, I know anecdotally because of some students that we were working with, as well as University of Illinois and University of Champaign, Michigan, they opened up their wait list more than they typically do late in the game. So international students, I guess since it is a very analytic industry, sometimes we're just getting the information about what's happening now because classes have just started. And some campuses haven't even started yet. So these numbers will be in. But we did see more taking off the wait list.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. And I can imagine how that might work international inbound to the United States. Selfishly, I'm curious. My ninth grader has expressed interest in studying overseas. So how about that as far as, American students finding spots to go to school overseas?
Well, so that will be we'll see if there's a cause and effect and how that plays out year to year in admissions. It was a little tighter to get admissions into McGill in Canada last year. And I don't know that had anything to do with legislation. I just think it had everything to do with some of their priorities and wanting to make sure there were spots open for their own Canadians. And no, I think we'll see how some of the changes work itself out and if there will be a cause and effect to our increase in trying to take U.S. citizens for our own spots. And if there's some pushback internationally for that, we'll have to kind of watch the data for that.
Yeah.
Any questions on that? It's just because it's too soon to tell, yeah. I think for now.
Sure. No, I think that that's just fine. Yeah. So, so let's maybe head back to the family level for thinking about, this process. So I mean, how do you all encourage families to think about this big decision? 18-year-olds, you're making these, hundreds of thousands of dollar cost decisions with your family, and every family will have their its own parameters of what kind of support they can or will provide. So maybe walk us through, like, how do you encourage families to start to think about this process and find a right fit, not just well, this is our family has always gone here, so now you should go there.
Yeah, but this is such a good question. So first of all, I think, and this is very relatable, is I assumed that our high school help was getting us further along than it potentially was. The high school counselors are working hard, and I think sometimes they are a bit overwhelmed. And like nationwide average, it's one high school advisor for about 270 kids. And again, that's just an average. So some kids are a little bit more uncertain about what they want to do for the rest of their lives at 17.
Yeah.
But I do think parents should think about it as more of a long range project that maybe can start a little bit more intentionally. College tours, college visits, talking to a financial advisor or someone in your team about, at the end of the day, what are we comfortable with as a purchase? I know it's a really emotional thing to think about it, that it's a purchase, but statistics show it really is the second largest purchase that you will make other than buying your home. We are talking about numbers. Many schools have touched $100,000 per year. So the idea of having those conversations a little bit earlier on, and maybe include the whole family, so your student doesn't fall in love with a school, apply, and get in, and we're totally uncertain about how much that school was going to cost. You thought your super smart kiddo was going to get more merit, but you applied to a school that has super tight selectivity rate, low selectivity, and they don't need to give out merit. And then you don't know, how are we going to pay for this? We'll work it out. Well, often that's why we are in the state that we were in with the loans. So long range project, think about it a little bit sooner. And again, you don't need to obsess about college as a 15-year-old. Matter of fact, I don't want you to. I really would like you to do some intentional things. But please don't wake up the fall semester of your senior year and hope that everything was done, because that's when people get to panic and have to miss school because they're writing too many essays or haven't toured schools. So I would say long range project for that.
It's interesting you think about the numbers. So my daughter goes to a very small private school.
Mm-hmm.
There's one advisor and there's 28 girls in her class. So she'll get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
My son is at a magnet school, and that's wonderful. And it's a much bigger place, and they have a lot of demands on those advisors. So I can very much see how those numbers would be different. But one of my favorite things that's happened with my daughter's school is they're not, as ninth graders, thinking about test scores and things, but they are very much encouraged to start to think about what you would like in a college.
Yes.
If you're thinking about this, because in this summer, Lucy we were talking about it, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to put that on my spreadsheet." And I was like, "Wait, you have a spreadsheet about this?" And she's like, "Yeah, my school, in our Google Documents." So she put a note, and I was like, "Well, what's on your list? What's your criteria?" And it was, that she wanted a place that had a soccer team so that she could either cheer for or maybe play for, the women's soccer team, that had a culinary program. She's interested in that. That had a history program. She's interested in that. And that was near a major airport. It was kind of her list. And so I was like, well, that's great. It's way further along, I think, than most ninth graders are. And so while we're not obsessing about college tours, if we're going to be in a place, it's great to go walk around the campus and get a sense of things, because you can feel, big place feels different than a small place and all sorts of other things. So yeah, Heidi.
So there you go. You're taking a piece of it and you're biting off a chunk that seems age appropriate. What I try to tell people is exactly, go catch a women's soccer game, go have a piece of pizza on campus, see the vibe, and see if that is a place that you can see yourself living and finding your friends, your people.
Yeah.
For 4 years, right? And think about it in maybe that context rather than what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And then you can fold other things in as it becomes, who comes here to recruit? Where do they have a co-op? How do what's the networking like? What if I am undeclared? You can lean in with right social fit first. That usually is the easiest way to start with a kiddo. But also then, what kind of a learner are you academically? Are you competitive? Are you collaborative? Is this a school where do you have interests where you're going to need research? Can you have access to that as a freshman, sophomore, junior? What does that look like? But I love the start with just visit campus, see how big is too big, figure out how small, how rural. I was out in New York last week and we did tours on several campuses, one of which was NYU, which is very exciting to a lot of kids. It might start on a lot of kids' lists. And, it's a wonderful school, great vibe, but it doesn't have a typical quad. And you might go from your classes into another building and then an elevator. Not right or wrong, but some of these kids don't know that. They just know the name. So by a tour or a visit through, you get to kind of take all that in. So I love that you are visiting already, and it sounds like a good, step by step.
Kind of along those lines, you mentioned that most 17-year-olds don't know exactly what they're planning on doing for the rest of their lives. How many actually do? Like, as you're talking with parents, how many people actually pick something at 17 and stick with that all through college? I mean, I think of the parents who are listening to this. Should they be worried that their kid hasn't figured that out yet?
No, no, because statistics will tell you that 70% of the students will switch their major. So we say, plan on it. I don't think everyone's going to go from, I wanted to be a pilot to, nope, I'm going to be a nurse or a doctor, right? I mean, that's a pretty big shift, right? But many, many, many kids will tweak their major. I'm going in as a business student. And, there's wealth management. I didn't know that. I'm going to add that in, or I'm going to change from accounting to wealth management. So, the vast majority of us need to learn critical thinking and adaptability, because obviously that's what life is throwing us right now. There are certain industries and certain majors that it does help to apply within a business school or an engineering program. Nursing can have a condensed program if you get direct admit. So there are some benefits. There is a great deal amount of stress for parents and kids if the kids don't know what they want to do. But I would say, let's think about classes, what you like and what you don't like. And there are opportunities to go in undeclared. But I do understand as a parent, you like to have that buttoned up and think that they're going to apply to a certain major. For a school like Michigan, if you get into the School of Michigan, you cannot then apply to transfer into their business school. They no longer allow it, because that was a way that kids would get in and then transfer to a program that was much, much, much more selective. So do know that there are some colleges that will put in some guardrails. And again, that's why parents will go back through and worry a little bit if we don't have a select major. So I would say it depends. And understanding that there is a lot of data that says that the kids will add on a major or switch it anyway.
Yeah. So did you, Caleb, you start with accounting?
No, I started with pre-law, switched to accounting. So go figure. What about you, Jude?
Yeah, no, I knew I liked the idea of business. So I started with a management degree and then took a finance class and loved it. And yeah, and then then I even took a class in there that It's Personal Financial Planning for Professional Planners by Dr. Dalton, who wrote the first like prep materials for the CFP exam. So it was just it was like, wow, like I can do this. Like I can deal with numbers and people. This is great. So, but I think you need to get in. Like I had a friend who wanted to be a neurosurgeon, and she is. But when I think about my friends from high school, like very few of them knew actually exactly what they wanted to do. I think it's far more in common than common to not, to just maybe have an idea, but not know exactly what you wanted to do and then see it happen.
Yeah.
Thing I wanted to touch on just kind of was like, sticker price versus actual price, because this comes up a lot with clients when they look at the numbers and say, oh, we're going to pay $90,000 a year for this. And my answer is maybe, like some people do, but often I don't see my clients actually spending anywhere near what like the stated total cost of attendance is. So what would you say to parents who are thinking about schools and the cost factor like that?
This is definitely an interesting discussion, because if you are a first-time parent and you don't know and understand a little bit about how the pricing works, the sticker price can be shocking and can frankly turn you away from some schools that at the end of the day, they are more flexibly priced. So there is this understanding of flexibly priced and inflexibly priced rather than in-state, out-of-state, or public and private. Leaning back into flexibly priced or inflexibly priced, because by the way, you really can have out-of-state and flexibly priced. If the college is super selective, think less than 20% selectivity. So they report that. That's something they're proud of, right? They have a line out the door. So they don't need to be flexibly priced. You are far more than likely to pay the sticker price because somebody else will if you won't. The other schools that are still really great schools, they just don't have 93,000 people applying to them, so they can be so selective. That's what you're looking for, where the sticker price isn't the sticker price.
Mm-hmm.
If the selectivity is somewhere broadly 20 to 25% and up, they need to fill their class. And so institutionally, they get to move the money under the coconuts a little bit. And that's where the things that your student does in high school is increasing their own scholarships. So the choices that they're making, the clubs that they're in, the grades that they're getting, the SAT, ACT prep, how are they developing themselves as a curious, academically ready, yes, I really want to go here and I'm going to be an awesome alum? That kind of messaging is what admissions officers love. And again, higher selectivity, you're more than likely to get multi-year, really positive merit scholarships. Super less selective school, not so much.
How do they calculate merit scholarships? I know it's probably something that's different by school, but is there some broad generalizations you can make on that?
Well, there's two different buckets of money that come from a college. One you get based on AGI, or adjusted gross income of the parents, and their assets.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we call more like the need-based bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some of us will just make too much money and we won't have access to that. And it's not that we have so many assets or our brokerage account is so big. Truly, what knocks us in and out of the need-based is that we make too much money. Our AGI is high enough. And since no one's quitting their job for their purposes of being more financially eligible for college, most of us are leaning into that merit-based bucket.
Is there a range or a number or so that you start to tell clients, like above a certain AGI?
Yeah.
You shouldn't really plan on this?
Good question. It is a little bit like a hockey stick, meaning a hockey stick, you get money here, and then it's like It's a huge increase where people won't get the money. If your AGI is about $280,000 or $300,000, even at the schools that cost $100,000 a year, USC, Pepperdine, Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt.
Right. And then we can just go eastward and whatever. You have to make under $300,000 to get any kind of money there, but they cover a significant portion of need. They are private and they are selective. They don't give merit, they give need-based aid.
Mm-hmm.
The merit is what you have control over, truly, right? Obviously, good grades. That is your biggest success story. Some schools, you have to have upper levels of GPA to get the merit. But other schools, it's not just 3 9s and above, but it depends on the school. So GPA, test scores, extracurriculars, or how you spend your time as a kiddo. Meaning you may have to spend your time at a job. You may have the opportunity to be in a club or a sport. You may be choosing to do something else that's intellectually interesting to you. We had a student that we worked with. His big thing was like motocross and biking and outdoors. Successfully applied to MIT because what he got to feature was how he would tinker with bikes and how he would build and deconstruct and reconstruct a bike. And it was so obvious where his curiosities were and how he could inch a little bit more like positive energy and like improvement out of the bikes. And he did that for years. And that's what he was able to feature as his passion, his curiosity. So those things that you do in high school, whether it be a club, an activity, a leadership role, or just leadership action.
Mm-hmm.
Test scores, as I said, all those kind of parts and pieces go into what you tell your story, the story that you're telling about who you are, and what you're going to do on campus. The better that messaging is, so some of the choices, but then the better the messaging is within your application. So busy people who are admissions officers, when they're reading about you for 8 to 13 minutes, it has to be concise. And so telling that story about who you are, writing well, your grades and your test scores are about 60%, 65% of how some schools will admit you. All those other things that you're talking about yourself can have a great deal of impact on holistic admissions and how they care about the student that they're admitting. So that is part of the recipe for merit.
No, that's really interesting. Thank you. I guess I thought there would be a simpler answer, but that was a really fascinating detailed look into how that works. So many thanks. That was great.
I can be more concise, but that
was very fascinating.
Okay. Yeah.
As we come towards kind of our end of our time, I guess, is there any kind of like wrap up thoughts or thing that you would say, like, if your family's really starting to think about this, what can you encourage them to do that they can start to feel some more control in this process?
So I would say on some level, I'm a planner, you're a planner. I do think that getting some sort of project management and specific times to stress about college and specific times to not, right? It can be overwhelming for the kids, and some legitimately shut down because they know that it's hanging on everybody. If life is like that in your family, just set agreed upon time to talk about college. So your kiddo is not on edge every single time they see you because they're worried you're going to ask about college, chunk it, start early enough. Take the approach Jude is doing. We're just going to go visit campus, see if you love it enough. The idea is there's 3,500 schools.
Mm-hmm.
It is more of a match. College is a match. It is not a prize to be won. Think about your right fit, your key criteria. And I think those are ways to broadly think about the opportunity and the fun that you can have. And then just a little bit of like thoughtful planning on the way to it, and really understanding that, there is a college for every kid. You're just having to think about it in a more like, what do you need as a student that you're going to succeed? 38% of the kids head off to college and transfer. It shows how hard it is for families to identify key criteria and then pick right fit schools if they're transferring at 38%. So helping these kids really understand what's going to work for them and approaching it that, it is it's best done over the course of not just senior year, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, well, I love that idea of this, like the match, not a prize, because I feel very fortunate. I, was a kid from a small town in South Louisiana who was pretty nerdy and had great test scores and GPAs and things. I had a lot of opportunity, and I could have gone to a prize type of a school, and it. So those options were there, and every once in a while I wonder, like, oh, maybe I should have done that. But I also know, like, as a kid from a small town in South Louisiana whose family didn't have like a lot of financial resources, being older now, I can see like, boy, that would have been really difficult to do. And I don't know how well I would have fit in a lot of things there. Whereas going to Loyola in New Orleans, where I did, was a smaller school. So I could have more of the attention that I needed. And so it was a way to move into a city like I wanted to be in, but not be in just a huge school like a Tulane, where my wife from Chicago went, which, we would say in New Orleans, like a lot of Northerners go to Tulane, a lot of Southerners go to Loyola. It's just, you feel the difference in the size and the environments, but all of those schools have their own things. And so it's, how do you find that fit for your family, environment wise, financially, that, makes sense for everybody going in and coming out? It's a big decision. And, so part of, College Inside Track, obviously you all have services that help families go through this process. So it's not just every once in a while I see people who are doing like, test prep or college aid consulting, but it's a very comprehensive process. And I think if families are looking for assistance with the whole picture, it's something that makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah. Having a coach or somebody who is a one-on-one consultant work with your family throughout several years, potentially, and getting you through identifying right fit schools and building a targeted list with right academic, right social, and financial in mind. And then with some hands-on help throughout the essay, the application, the financial aid process, right? It really can be a stress reducer for very busy families, and really helpful to have that neutral third party.
So we got a few rapid fire questions that we generally go through with our guests. So first and most important is, what is your favorite animal?
Oh my gosh, my favorite animal would be the horse. I've always loved horses. I grew up loving horses. I didn't live on a farm, but the idea of like a wild Mustang or whatever on some beach, in North or South Carolina, love that. Georgia, that horse.
Yeah, there is a national park down that way that does have wild horses on the beach. I can't remember which one it is, but I remember that we saw them from a distance. What do you think's the best money you've ever spent?
I'm going to just say traveling.
Yeah.
World views, traveling, seeing someplace else, getting, I'm looking at my other screen here. It's like these beautiful mountains. I looked up today and I found, like, did a little research about that on my Windows machine, and it was Poland. Like, Poland looks like that? Oh, I got to go see Poland, So I love
Beautiful.
to travel.
you have very randomly two people who have been to Zakopane in Poland, and so like in the mountains
Stunning.
there. So
absolutely beautiful. Yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to have to make sure, but I mean, I know it was Poland. I don't know if it was Zakopane, but
yeah. Well, and as financial people on a podcast will tell you, like, it's remarkably inexpensive to go to Poland as well, compared to, going to the Western Alps, if you will, or especially going west, like to Colorado. You talk about less expensive.
For sure.
So we can have another conversation about that. But always glad to talk about travel.
I have Poland is on my list. I haven't been to Warsaw. I haven't been, I've been to Germany and some areas nearby, but not Poland.
Yeah, Warsaw and Krakow, really amazing cities. Highly recommended.
Yeah, neat. Okay, well, we'll have to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean,
I'm going to go to Morocco and Portugal in February. And last year, my big trip was New Zealand and Australia. So I am trying to hit some bucket list places.
Yeah. Well, so on the travel theme, favorite place to visit?
Oh, I loved Sydney, Australia. I really did. I loved Sydney, Australia. So I'm going to stick with, it is a beautiful area far away, but I really, really loved it.
All right. And then dream trip you haven't done?
Dream trips that I haven't done. I've spent virtually no time in actual northern Italy. I've hit some bigger cities in Italy. I am really more now about seeing smaller cities, countryside, and getting a little bit more of a flavor agriculturally, and learning a little bit more about how the spice market in Morocco works, or how growing olives. So northern Italy is going to be something else. Although I could also say Croatia. I mean, I'm going to love going over there.
Fantastic. Well, great. Caleb, any final notes or questions from you?
No, I really appreciate it. That was a really fascinating conversation. So many clients, as you said, this is one of the biggest financial decisions they will make, right? Especially as a 17, 18-year-old making it a many $100,000 decision. So I love that. I agree with Jude that it's not a prize. It's the right fit. That is such a thing. I think people now, perhaps it's social media influence, but people think, I have to go to this school if I'm going to be successful or whatever. But showing how that's not really the case. This was a great conversation. I'm sure people like it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. I appreciate Jude. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Heidi, if people were to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. We can be found on the web, College Inside Track. My email, Heidi King, CIT, at College Inside Track. And, I guess through you guys and your planning team at the Planning Center.
Yeah, definitely. No, if you reach out to us, we can always help to make a connection. So thanks again for joining us, Heidi. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. You can always reach me. I'm Jude at theplanningscenter.com. It's Caleb at theplanningscenter.com. Or our main phone is 309-797-4030. So thanks again. Please like, subscribe, share, and let us know if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to continue the conversation. Thanks, everybody.